Working together to make a better community. We can create a brighter day.
Welcome to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and my guest today is Dave Bradley with the Outland Youth Employment Program. Welcome, Dave.
Hi, Steve.
Dave, let me start. Give me some background on yourself. Are you a local boy, or give me a little of your history?
Well, I hope I've earned local status, but I moved here in 1993 when we brought our tree planting operation called Outland to Thunder Bay and put a permanent office here, and we've been here ever since.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Ottawa Valley, Pembroke, Ontario. So as they say, you can take the boy out of the valley, but you can't take the valley out of the boy.
So, how did you get involved with Outland in the beginning?
Well, I actually worked for another company for 1 year as a tree planter, and after that season was recruited by a brand new startup company called Outland. So I ended up being the first employee in 1986.
Oh my gosh!
So I've been with our firm since the beginning for upwards of 35 years.
And where is Outland based? What's head office?
Today, Outland is a subsidiary of a company called Dexterra. So that's a Toronto-based firm, but Outland, as a division of Dexterra, is based here in Thunder Bay, and we have operations across Canada.
Oh, that is so great.
Yeah, we just moved the head office to Thunder Bay about a year and a half ago. So it's funny because one of my original partners, I owned the company, Outland, before we sold it, and we always thought about where head office should be, and of course I was always trying for Thunder Bay, and not long ago I had a coffee with one of my former co-owners, and we laughed because he said, "Bradley, you won. You got the head office where you wanted it."
Well, let me put the official seal. You're now a local boy.
Yay, excellent. Good
All
stuff.
right.
Thank you.
So now Outland started out really tree planting, but you're here today to talk about one of the programs at Outland, the Youth Employment Program.
Yeah. So
Tell me a little bit of that history.
Well, we've been here since basically the mid-'80s. And as we became more informed about where it was we were working, because honestly, when I came to Thunder Bay, I really didn't have a strong appreciation of Indigenous culture, territorial lands, treaties, that kind of thing. And then as our work, as we matured as a business and as we matured as individuals, we became a lot more informed and realized, holy smokes, there's some real challenges out there, which a company like Outland can actually be a part of helping to create opportunity for people, not only for the people themselves, but as well the people who work for us. Because if we can, the more times we can bring people together into common projects, let's say, and we're working together toward a goal, there is what I would look at as a form of reconciliation. But this was all happening way back in the day as we were emerging as a company in the region. And in 2000, actually it was a discussion in 1999 with one of our forest industry customers, who said he was having a lot of difficulty trying to engage First Nations adults in the forestry workplace because the forest companies were trying their best to offer employment opportunities, offer career opportunities, and the uptake just wasn't happening. And so my suggestion was, well, gee, why don't we try something with youth? Because I could see the Ontario Ranger program was really quite successful.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Very popular.
getting youth from around the province fired up about the natural environment and living and working in the north. So we sort of formed a model, an employment model, and put together a proposal. And Bowater at the time, now Resolute, and Weyerhaeuser and Dryden, both companies looked at this proposal and said, yeah, let's give it a whirl. And that's where we got our start, and we haven't looked back. 20 years later, we're still up and running and providing a neat opportunity for Indigenous kids in the summer. So the other thing in those early years, you know, it's hard as a mainstream kind of business and person to kind of see things from the Indigenous perspective and understanding what are these barriers for people kind of just striding out into mainstream and saying, yeah, I'm going to do it. It doesn't work that way. And it takes a lot of acceptance of Indigenous culture and just being comfortable with how life is and you know, centuries of cultural development. You just don't turn it off and say, this is how it's all going to work right now. And so I believe that Outland on its journey has learned to be more accepting and learn to work better with the Indigenous clientele, let's say our employees. In 2018, we had 500 employees in Ontario, and 350 of those people were Indigenous. So that says something. Mm-hmm. Most of our work is contract-based. It's shorter term. It's seasonal, that kind of thing. So we're not necessarily saying we've given 350 full-time jobs with everybody making, you know, $50,000 or more a year. But what it does say is that of the group of people that are working with us and for us, we've learned to work together with a lot of you know, Indigenous communities, individuals, tribal councils, employment agencies, to try to maximize opportunity and create employment opportunities for people. So
this was a purposeful direction that you chose to say, let's involve more workers from the Indigenous communities. Yeah,
like I was the senior guy here in Thunder Bay, so it was a lot had to do with my idea where we needed to take our company. And it was clear to me, like, we're talking about my friends, people that we see in the grocery store, people that we're living alongside, people that my daughter is going to school with. Like, these are the people that we're dealing with here in Thunder Bay. Tons of friends and business acquaintances and so on across the north now. So we've got we just have to be more inclusive and just open our doors and make these workplaces feel safe, a place where someone can come and learn and feel good about what they're doing in the workplace and with other people. Harassment and abuse-free, that kind of thing, a safe place to work. And that's what we're striving for. We're not perfect, but we're striving for it. And I think our employment numbers are fairly indicative of where we're getting. We're on a journey and we're trying. The youth program supports all of what this larger mission is for our company. And it's become a wonderful part of what we do. And it's created, I would say, it's really helped our company evolve, the people in it, toward the era of reconciliation, toward trying to do better, trying to work together. And, you know, for all the youth that we're going to talk about their achievements and outcomes, there's a whole supporting management and our own hierarchy as a business. All of us in that whole realm are becoming better at working together with Indigenous and mainstream societies working together. So I think it's probably...
Hang on there, because we have to take a short break.
Okay.
We're going to be right back and find out more about the success of Outland. Welcome back to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and my guest today is Dave Bradley with the Outland Youth Employment Program. So Dave, we talked a little bit about Outland and how you got 500 staff, that most of whom are out in the summer planting trees. And you made this conscious decision to really diversify or have a more inclusive workforce with Indigenous folks. And so I think it was 1999, you said, you started saying, okay, let's do programming with young Indigenous folks. Tell me a little bit more about that. What kind of programming is that, and how does it work?
Well, I should say to start with that one of the big things that we realized as we tried to expand our line of businesses up here in the north was that the Indigenous folks in their communities are actually the closest to the jobs that we're doing out on the land.
That's right. You're planting close to their communities.
And it just made sense that we try to employ people locally. Now, and further, once we got more in touch with what's going on, they had long histories of doing these exact same things, like forest firefighting, forest renewal, tree planting, that kind of thing. They'd been coming out for years to do that kind of work. And so we were realizing, heck, there's already a workforce there, and there's a tradition of doing this kind of stuff. And to try to make those connections and get people back out working on the things that they had a history of in the community anyway. So that was how the Outland was evolving, and we got involved in forest firefighting in the mid-90s. So that was just in front of starting the youth program. So we're realizing that we're out on the land working on someone's traditional territory. Everywhere you are in Canada, you are. Yeah. So now it behooves us to try to work with the communities that are close by. And then the idea of starting a youth program that kind of worked with the communities that were impacted by the forest industry's operations. And that's where we originally started. So we had approximately, between the two companies, Bowater and Weyerhaeuser, was approximately 12 or 13 communities in northwestern Ontario that we accessed first for the first youth. And I was just texting with one of the girls from Lac Seul from the first 2 years, because she ended up coming back for a second year. And both her children are now in the program. So we have second generation kids in this thing now. It's just crazy, because we're 20 years in. We had our 20th anniversary at the end of August. So that's quite a milestone. And if you talk to John Hodson, who I believe you talked to not long ago on this show, he would say there isn't another program like this anywhere in the world based on his research. And he is a researcher in the area of education for youth, Indigenous youth across everywhere. Anyway, that's a really interesting thing too. So here we've started this program that it frankly relies on a really broad group of stakeholder partners to make it happen every year. We need the funding, we need industry and commercial partners to support the program. We need educational institutions to provide programming. And so it becomes this incredible network of contributors to to providing programming that's improving the well-being of all these participants. And the statistics that we're getting nowadays speak to exactly that. The success that we're seeing is really quite remarkable. And the fact that former graduates are now sending their kids, and there are a number of them now, because being those early years, that's probably the greatest sign of success to me, is when your parents are sending their own children to come.
So you talk about industry partners. What role do they play?
Well, okay, take for example, someone like Resolute, for example. They have forest licenses across Northern Ontario. And so they are obligated to sustain great working relationships with the communities they're impacting, okay? So they will help us to provide opportunities for the youth to learn. So for example, we do an annual tree plant every year with the programming. In each of our camps across Canada, we do run a tree plant. And that's a really fantastic learning opportunity for anybody to go through actually planting trees for a number of days and go through the whole spectrum of where the trees are grown, learning how to plant trees, planting the trees, managing the trees, etc. But Resolute will provide those trees, and they will provide the area to plant them. They'll make sure that area is site prepped and ready to go. Over the years, we've planted several million trees since the beginning for Resolute through the youth program. So it's been a great contribution to their renewal work, and it's one of those experiential things that really teaches a person a lot about themselves and a lot about what it is they're about to do. And actually, that is a key factor, is that when our partners are supporting us with activities, like let's say we go and tour a mine, or we do Science Week here in town with one of the college or the university. All of this we try to make as experiential as possible, because that is that is the natural learning way for Indigenous people, from what we've been told, and really you can see it. You can see the comfort level with the youth when that is the type of learning, but out on the land, doing something, feeling a sense of accomplishment. That is the learning cycle right there.
So a little bit about the kind of logistics of the program. Is it a program just in the summertime?
Yeah, so it's 6 weeks long.
6 weeks.
It's a live-in camp.
In the bush?
In the bush kind of thing, semi-remote. We tend to use, where we can, we use former Ontario Ranger camps. So we have 3 in Ontario. And then we're using other sites in northern Manitoba, northern Alberta, and northern BC. Not exactly the same format, but in all cases, they're out somewhere on the land as a group of people, more or less away from town. And in this environment, it's an instant community. It becomes a family. And we'll have be 25 youth there and another roughly 8 staff, including cook. And that's sort of the model. So we just have just over 30 people kind of together. And they stay together for 6 weeks. And we've got a really busy schedule of work and learn and other life skills opportunities.
So you have, did you say what, 6 of these locations with 25 youth in each one? What are the age of the youth?
16 to 18 is our entry window. And then once you're in, you can come back for a second year. So you could be 19 in camp as a second year ranger. And further, we have a leadership stream. So you can stay on as a crew leader in training, crew leader. We have yet to have our first camp boss come out of our ranger group, but that day will come. And we're looking forward to that day. But yeah, so we've had people with us for as much as 10 years, with post after they've graduated, stayed on in our forestry operations and gone off to school. And the nice thing about the whole forest renewal and ranger type stuff, it all happens in spring and summer, so it fits into a typical college or university year. So it's it's a great way to kind of augment your regular school year education with meaningful employment and sticking with the family that you've become accustomed to.
We need to take another short break.
All right.
Please stay with us and we'll find out a little bit more about the youth program. Welcome back to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and my guest today is Dave Bradley with the Outland Youth Employment Program. So Dave, we've gotten a bit of an overview. What actually happens in those 6 weeks that the youth are involved in the program?
All right. Well, it's definitely an immersive kind of life skills experience. We feel that if we can bring the youth into an environment where we can provide a routine, a daily routine of meals, work, sleep, what ends up happening is the youth actually they start to feel good because it's a physiological change as much as is a change in a lot of other things. And they start to feel what it feels like to feel good about physically. Because a lot will arrive, frankly, with some struggles, some things that they're challenged by, substance issues, that kind of thing, which we really don't know about before they get there. But It is basically cold turkey. They've got a dry camp contract that they have to sign, and people sign on as well as the parents, and it's a commitment. And within days, the whole group is gelling together as a really quite a happy group of people, starting to feel really good.
And they're all Indigenous youth.
Yep, all Indigenous youth.
And the staff are?
They're a mix. We have a lot of youth that have stayed on into leadership positions. Our staff's probably 50-50, non-Native and Indigenous. And that, frankly, that ratio is gradually changing. It's more and more Indigenous all the time. And that's quite exciting. But during the time that they're in camp, so there is the work aspect, which we touched on in different experiences that they've had, but there's also training that occurs while we're there. And the neat thing is when you're in an environment like that, you can basically fill in the time really tightly with activities and learning environments, work environments. You can maximize the 6 weeks. And by the way, people are paid. So there's basically the 6 weeks entails training days and work days. And each year that you're there, first year person might get 25 work days and then a bunch of training days. Second year youth are more like 35 work days and then some training days. The crew leaders in training are working the whole time, kind of thing. So earnings go up each successive year. The amount of pay goes up each successive year, so there's incentive to kind of stay with the program. And while they're in the camp, I'm just going to read off a few things here that we accomplish. But there's the typical workplace training like WHMIS, hazard identification, standard operating procedures. Everyone has to get their first aid. Second year people go for their standard first aid, first year emergency first aid. Then there's bear awareness. There's chainsaw safety training, tree planting, brush saw operation. Financial literacy is part of what we do as we fill in time in the evenings. G1 driver's license testing, so we're encouraging kids to start on a driver's license pathway, which is what our employers, our industry partners tell us is one of the big deficiencies. They can't find drivers for in the mines or in forestry operations. Mm-hmm. We do Ontario Canoe and Kayak Level 1 and 2, so it's called ORCA. We do the SP 102 Forest Firefighter training. The S100 Forest Firefighter training is offered at the end for students who want to stick around for a 7th week to get that 5-day course. Heavy equipment operator simulation we do, as well as through all of this, there's a curriculum that's put together by an on-site teacher, and youth who participate in everything can earn 2 cooperative credits, high school credits, toward their high school education. So if you come for 2 years in a row, you can end up with 4 credits toward graduating from high school. And we know for a fact that those 4 credits are playing a big part in us reaching our 90% high school or equivalent graduation rates from our graduates of this program.
So let me go back to that and try to understand. So you're talking about 90% of the participants in the program, when they continue with their formal education in high school, 90% are successful graduating high school.
Yeah,
if
or
they've completed,
an equivalent program. Yep.
Okay. And that, what I've learned previously in terms of the Indigenous population, is a real big change. Because in the District of Thunder Bay, only 35% of Indigenous students complete their high school education in that first go-around.
On average, yeah.
So was that part of the purpose of the program, to try to increase the graduation rate from high school?
You know,
or was that just that was like, hey, isn't that great? Look at that happen too.
It's such a good question, and it was an educator that was involved, came from the Long Lake First Nation Education Authority, who said, "How come these kids aren't receiving some credit toward high school for this experience?" And she's with the federal school system. And we had, Claire is her name, and Claire basically implemented these co-op credits, and this was probably 10 years ago. So we hadn't really thought about that. Originally, we were more about the employment and more about, the learning, just awareness and life skills. But now it's became a double, it was a huge advantage to add in these co-op credits. And so I always say, there's no manual telling us how to do this. We are writing the manual as we go. We're 20 years in. This has been self-learned and self-taught on the way. We've made some mistakes here and there, but by and large, we have a model now that's incredibly effective. And
tell me about how effective that is. You've got some recent research around employment numbers.
Yeah, so currently the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business is doing a study, and their research team is doing a study on what are the outcomes of this program. It seems to, the education graduation rates are over the moon. Satisfaction rates, everybody enjoys it. Everybody finishes. It's only the odd person that doesn't complete the program every year. And these are completely unexpected outcomes. And now we're finding out that of a group of our graduates, based on the research, 77% of graduates are employed.
So this is historically over the last 20 years. You look at everybody there, and 77% are now. Exactly,
and the sample, when they did the research, they got survey returns from 30 youth from 30 communities. We've now worked with 103 communities across Canada. But anyway, at that point, 30 communities. The employment rates for those communities by themselves are roughly, 19% or so.
In the First Nation community. We're just about out of time.
Okay.
If people want to find out more, what's the best way to do that?
Well, they can certainly approach Outland. I suggest if you talk to a guy named Mark Camille. He's in our office here in Thunder Bay on Squire Street.
We'll put him up, his email address there.
Yeah, please do.
And we're out of time. Dave, I'm so sorry to cut you off, but we'll have to have you back again someday.
Hey, look forward to it.
Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
And please stay tuned and stay safe this week.
Working together to make a better community. We can create a brighter day.